Hey guys, it's Saturday, just about 1:15, March 16th. Tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day, um, 2024. And yesterday, I gave a little talk on what I've read from my blog, and it was about Sukhasana, otherwise known as the easy pose. Um, it is a cross-legged seated position. Simple, nothing fancy. It's not the lotus pose or the half lotus pose. Not difficult at all. It's what we did in kindergarten as kids, sitting, um, legs crossed, comfortable, at ease, unbound, not restricted in any way. And that seemed to, not so much the pose itself, but the posture meditation seemed to resonate with some people. And I had some questions about meditation, how to start. So I thought maybe we talk a little bit about it today. And it's easy to start meditating. However, maybe it's not easy to gain that commitment of sitting every day or twice a day. I can tell you that the benefits of doing so far outweigh any perceived inconvenience. However, you don't know that, and I can tell you that all I want, but unless you experience it, you don't know. Um, it takes a little bit of time to get there. It takes that commitment. Sorry, I'm looking at my cat. Of doing it every single day, of showing up every day before you start to begin the results. Now, you could say physiologically, emotionally, you really gain the benefits of meditation from very first sitting. Your blood pressure is lowered, your stress level is reduced, your immunity is increased, you feel better, you're happier, you're more compassionate, and you have more empathy from sitting just once in meditation. However, the effects um, last a few hours, maybe a day, um, twice a day meditation. And of course, it all depends on your present stress level when you start. Um, Lizard Dogzilla, am I saying that right? Are you transgendered? No. Um, Interesting question, though. Makes me wonder why somebody would want to ask one way or the other. Um, so, anyway, the effects of meditation begin in the immediacy of sitting. They last depending on how long the stress level that you begin with, the immunity function that you have right now, the empathy and compassion that you have in this moment. And then there's a guy Zilla says, I like going around asking people most of the time, asking people what most of the time they get mad. Interesting. Um, it's not an offensive question, but I'd say it's a private question. So I'd have no reason to get mad if I was. I'd have no reason to get mad if I wasn't. It doesn't make sense to me to get mad any more than it makes sense to me to ask somebody that question. So I'm pretty open in everything. You know, you go online, you go on YouTube, you give a talk about anything whatsoever, and somebody's going to ask you something. Of the infinite numbers of questions that can be asked, someone's going to ask you one of them. And um, man, if I was going to go around spending my time being offended by any of those questions, I'd have no time to do anything. Same with anyone. You know, what's the sense in being offended? Offended means that my ego is responding to something that someone said. At this point in my life, it makes no sense. Lizard Dogzilla, am I saying that right? Lizard Dogzilla. That's a nice channel name. I like that, by the way. It says, True That Brother. And I can't pronounce the name above, nor can I read the questions. Sorry, my friend. So, um, you know what? 20 years ago, maybe longer, I've been meditating well over 30 years. If someone were to ask me a question, my ego would have responded. A question like that, my ego definitely would have responded uh, with "How dare you ask me that question?" Getting all upset, getting mad. Which and what purpose would that serve? Because it wouldn't affect you, the asker, but it would affect me. My blood pressure would rise. I'd be all flustered um, and irritable, and I'd carry it with me for the rest of the day. How dare somebody ask me a question like that? Um, Man, how ridiculous that would be for me to be affected by someone. That's why the Buddha said, um, "You're not punished because of your anger." And you could substitute anger for almost any other emotional type of action. You're punished for your anger. The anger itself is the punishment, meaning that, you know, if you get angry, you're not punished because you're angry. The punishment is that rise in blood pressure, the that you carry with you for the rest of the day, that you end up being in a bad mood for hours on end, thinking about it the next day and the day after and the day after. That's the law of karma. Karma isn't punishment. It's not even really cause and effect. It's really just the continuous effect. Um, and the way to stop that is to simply be aware. See it arising, see it present, and you let it go. You really don't even have to let it go because it's not even there any longer. It's gone. Poof. Um, Liz Gazilla said, I completely agree. Same with people wanting to fight on the street just because of their ego when a true man can walk away happily. Yes, agree 100%. Especially considering even if you engage in a fight, and even if it's a fair fight, if you hit someone and let's say they fall, they hit their head on the curb, they die, you're the one going to jail. You're the one suffering. If he suffers brain injury, you're the one suffering lawsuits. None of that is worth it at all. Um, I highly recommend looking at Tim Larkin. He does target focus training, which is um, a pretty effective form of self-defense, where he talks the difference between social violence, which is just two guys bumping chest, and ego versus ego, throwing punches at each other, versus asocial violence. And asocial violence is when the guy you're fighting just doesn't give a shit. And he's going to eye gouge you. He's going to hit you with a beer bottle over the head. He's going to rub an ashtray in your face. He's going to hit you with a crowbar. He's not trying to win a fight. He's trying to put you down. And you never know who's going to slip into that asocial violence at any moment. So it's not worth it. You don't know. Some guy cuts you off on the road. He might have just gotten out of prison, having a bad day. His wife broke up with him. He doesn't care what happens. So you chase him down because your ego's been hurt. And things get really serious and really bad. All because your ego, as Lizard Dogzilla said, couldn't take it. All because your ego got offended and you were unable to walk away. You had a point to prove, and you're not proving it to someone else. You're proving it to yourself because you have that nagging little voice in your head saying, you should have did this, you should have done that. I spent decades listening to that voice um, and being miserable because of it until I realized it's just a voice. It's not me. I'm the presence that's aware of that voice. That presence doesn't respond. It's simply aware. Awareness isn't involved in any of this. And when you realize that you are not your thoughts, that you're the presence awareness, we can combine that in one word, um, you're free. You're absolutely free. Doesn't mean in Tibetan yoga, Tibetan Buddhism as well, they call it Shepna, Chepna, which means hook. So even when you realize that you're not your thoughts, even when you gain that sense of freedom of being aware, you still get hooked on occasion, but you see it. You see that you hooked, and you're able to smile about it. Um, Balance says, that's true. Your ego will drag you to hell. Yeah, it has. Everyone who's ever been to hell, whatever hell their life has turned into, it's because they listened to the ego, because it had that sense of self-importance, a puffed up sense of self-importance, where I got to bump my chest up against yours and show you what it's all about. Everyone. Think of all the world leaders. Think of Ukraine versus Russia right now. Russia versus Ukraine. All because of one person. We can get, I don't want to get political and say um, we should be sending money, we shouldn't be sending money, but just imagine the mind of Putin, where all these people can die because of a single decision that he made, and he doesn't care. If that's not the voice of ego telling him, hey, you got to show people who's the boss, who's the greatest, who's the most feared world leader of them or the most fearless world leader of them all that could change with just a simple recognition of it's just a voice. It's not even who I am. It's just a voice that I'm listening to and believing. Imagine how freeing it would be if you didn't believe every thought that you had. Desert Dogzilla says men will die over the ego. Yeah, and they have. And it's not even, we think of it as the sort of the exception, that these are, just a few people. But the best people in the world can get involved, believing their ego, and go into a world of trouble. You can have a guy who's never been in a fight in his entire life, and he's in a bar, and someone bumps into him in front of his wife, and then looks at him and laughs, and all of a sudden that guy who's mild-mannered turns into a raging idiot and goes off because he feels less than in his own mind. He doesn't even know what his wife is thinking. It shouldn't even matter what his wife or girlfriend or whatever is thinking. And of course, it's not just men. Women obviously have their own encounter with ego as well. One of the quickest ways to tame the ego, see through the ego, sit in meditation once a day, twice a day. The first revelation that you get when you sit in meditation is, damn, there's a lot of thoughts going on in there. I can't get quiet. My mind is just going thought after thought after thought after thought. That's what the mind does. The art of meditation isn't to quiet the mind. That's beyond, you can't use the mind to quiet the mind. It's impossible. The nature of the mind is to think. But all of a sudden, as all those thoughts are going on in your head, you realize what you just said. Man, there's a lot of thoughts going on in there. Where is there? And who just said that? More importantly, who's listening to that? That implies that there's thoughts, and there's the observer of the thought. There's the witness to the thought. Instantly, everything changes because you're now the witness. And again, the witness is unaffected by thoughts, unaffected by action, unaffected by anything. The witness's only role is to witness. And that's who we truly are. But even more amazingly, at a certain point, even the witness disappears. And there is just this, just life happening spontaneously, easily. And we're not responsible for any of it. But we're directly participating within it. Balance says, I always cared more about what others thought, more so than what was best for me. So even though I've outgrown trying to make everyone happy, it still haunts me in areas of my life. Um, yeah, amazingly, that's still another aspect of the ego. People think that, you know, the ego is all about pushing and shoving and puffing themselves up. It's also about pleasing people, wanting to be liked, wanting to be recognized, wanting to get that, hey, that's a good guy. He always makes me happy. He's always going out of his way. He's always doing this. The sad thing is that it's an inauthentic experience. Not that kindness, compassion, and empathy is inauthentic. It's very authentic, but it's also spontaneous. It's a natural arising of being human. But when we force it, when we take it to those extremes that we're always putting it out there to show other people, hey, look how compassionate I am. Or, hey, look, I'm an empath. I feel things deeply. No one feels anything more deeper than another. How could they? However, the response itself might vary because, again, it all goes back to awareness. And there isn't levels of awareness. There is simply being aware. Awareness itself invokes that compassionate action. Awareness invokes empathy, and awareness invokes kindness. The type of kindness of look at me, look at me, look at me isn't true kindness. Not that people can't benefit from it, and not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it can make us suffer, as Balance has pointed out, that he went through, you know, his life trying to please others. Where was the kindness towards himself? I'm sorry, Balance. I'm saying himself, and I don't actually know. No offense meant, but Balance is right, and yep, that is my downfall. Um, Lizard Dogzilla says, I've got to leave. Call more people transgender now. Keep going, brother. That is the only useful stream I've come across. Thanks. Well, good luck with your responses, Lizard Dogzilla. Come back sometime and let me know. Come back again and ask if I'm transgendered. Because you know what? 2 days from now, I might change my mind. And if you don't ask, you're never going to know. So thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. Balance says, that's me. So now I can just say less and appreciate your wisdom. Hey, you know what? It's actually your wisdom. You know, the conversation that we're having is just revealing your natural wisdom. And, you know, we're feeding off of each other in this conversation. Balance says, none taken, brother. Thanks. I appreciate that. And Lizard Dogzilla says, we'll do, bro. See you then. Take care. So, you know, again, take that same care towards other people and just turn it towards yourself and see what unfolds, see what comes from that. It doesn't take away anything from anyone else. In fact, what you'll find is that you have more true empathy, care, and compassion to offer people because now you're giving it away authentically, freely, because you've touched into that the depth of who you really are. Balance says, no transgender here, but love, this is my first cousin, I'm dapping. That I don't fully get. I don't fully understand. Lizard Dogzilla says that he likes to go on people. Oh, I'm shaking hands with you. Okay, thanks. Lizard Dogzilla says he likes to go on other people's channels and ask them if they're transgender because most people get upset. Most people get mad. So for him, it's like just a testing ground. 20 years ago, it was the same thing asking someone if they were gay. People would get so upset. How dare you? And then they'd have to show, how dare you call me gay? I've had 16 girlfriends in the last year. I've had 27 uh, sexual experiences in the past 2 weeks, or whatever, something ridiculous. Um, Back to our original talk, all about ego. Bella says, if I chose to be anything, I'd stand on it, just as everyone should. Agree 100%. Be yourself. More importantly, accept yourself. And once you do, again, you're absolutely free. How amazing it is how amazing it feels for me when I had a great conversation with Lizard Godzilla. I actually enjoyed his company. But had I got mad when he came on here to ask me that, if I got mad, um, we would have went back and forth. It would have been ridiculous. He would have walked away, um, mission accomplished, and we would have missed out on a great conversation. He might walk away and think, yeah, he's transgendered, she's transgendered, whatever. Um, what does it matter to me, one way or the other? I actually really enjoyed the conversation I had with him, and I would have missed out by being offended. Most people are so easily offended for no good reason whatsoever. It has absolutely nothing to do with them. In yogic psychology, it's called samskaras, which are the emotional imprints that we groove into our brain through a lifetime, from when the moment we're in the womb coming out, and we have these emotional responses to everything that even resembles something that happens, and we immediately drop into that imprint, that deep groove, and we react that way. Someone cuts us off in traffic, we have an emotional imprint for that. We saw how our father reacted, how our mother reacted, whoever, and we've been trained by life to just react, 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 react. Of course, in yogic and Buddhist psychology, they say that this actually goes back lifetimes. Doesn't matter if you believe it or not. We know through neuroscience that those imprints themselves are there. The good news is, as soon as you become aware that these are samskaras are in place, that the natural imprints, the grooves, the emotional grooves are there, just the awareness alone lessens their impact. And then you go to work. Then you start to meditate. Then you start to do some breath work, some pranayama. You might want to do yoga nidra, which is that deep yogic sleep. You're in that state in between true sleep and wakefulness. And just by being there, and you can go on YouTube and look at any yoga nidra script, and someone will guide you through it. Just by being in that state, you lessen the impact of your emotional samskaras, and you become less reactive, and you learn to become responsive, which is so different. A response is thoughtful. I always love the term responsibility, our ability to respond. And we've lost that. We've become reactionary beings. You do this to me, and I react instantly. I'm in fight or flight. You cut me off in traffic, and I'm in that sympathetic nervous state. You bump in line, or you cut me off in line, you bump into me, you insult me, look at me funny, and I'm in that parasympathetic state. However, all the things that I've mentioned, practicing yoga, doing the yoga nidra, meditating, simply doing breath work 3 times a day, therapeutically as needed, easier than meditation. I know a lot of people don't want to sit 20 minutes a day, 40 minutes a day in meditation, but everyone can do 3 minutes of breath work 3 times a day, especially because it's an activity versus the passivity of meditation. Balance says, yep, and also accountability. Yeah, excellent point as well. So when you do that breath work, you're smoothing out those emotional imprints, and you're able to respond thoughtfully with kindness. Sometimes kindness means taking a hard stance. Evan S. says, you ever smoke pot? No, when you ask me that, are you saying, do I ever smoke pot now, or have I ever smoked pot? I spent years, my teenage years, in my best friend's basement smoking pot, listening to Led Zeppelin albums. And that was back in the day when you had to go out and hunt your pot down. You had to find the right person. You had to be careful. You had to hide your bong from your parents. I miss those days. Evan S., you asked me before about doing, was it mushrooms or LSD? Which, of course, the answer was yes to all of that as well. Balance says, stay blessed, bro. I subscribe. Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I actually smoked a lot of pot, and then I stopped because I started getting paranoid. It wasn't enjoyable. I would smoke pot, and I'd be in this state of, when I first started smoking pot, loved it for years. It opened up the creative side of me. It helped me overcome shyness. It was pretty valuable. And then it wasn't fun. So I stopped. And unfortunately, I started drinking. And again, socially, drinking helped me. Always being shy, all of a sudden I had a couple drinks and I was the life of the party. I just opened up. I would dance. I would chat. I would be charming until I became an alcoholic and, man, drank myself out of relationships and friendships and jobs, wrecked my car several times. So you didn't need to know all that with your simple question. The answer was yes. Do I smoke pot now? A few years ago, I would smoke a little bit at night. I'd had some stress and I thought it would help relax. But man, that new stuff now is just too strong for me. So I stopped that as well. And of course, I haven't had a drink in 25 years through the power of grace alone. Well, here's the thing. Here's the secret. You can cultivate grace. We think of grace, rightfully so, as unbestowed, that you can't earn grace because the nature of grace is unearned. It's just surprisingly given, gifted, received. However, you can court grace, meaning you can do what we'll call a sadhana, which is spiritual practice. And through that spiritual practice, you make yourself open for grace to appear. And when I was still drinking, I started being very serious about my meditation practice, and my life started to change. One day, an unfortunate incident when I was drunk happened, and I had the sudden realization, almost like I was instantly sober, and I had the sudden realization that if I wanted, I never had to take a drink again. And that moment, for whatever reason, I became a non-drinker. It's as if every cell in my body turned around and said, you're someone different. The desire to drink after a decade of hard drinking every night a week, every single night. I took a night here and there off. I used to practice judo. Before a hard judo practice, I would take the day before, the night before off. Sometimes. Other times I'd pay the price and simply practice judo with a hangover or show up in the gym with a hangover. But for a decade, I was a pretty hardcore drinker, a lot. And in a single moment, Not because I did anything special. I just became a non-drinker. That thought occurred to me. Can't even rightly call it a thought. It was simply that intuitive feeling. If I never wanted to drink again, I didn't have to. I would still, a couple weeks after, show up in a bar, and I realized that I just didn't belong there anymore. Evan says, do you miss drinking? You know what? No, because it's no longer even something that even remotely is part of me anymore. For me to miss drinking means that it would be something that I even recognize. And it's almost like when I talk now, I'm talking about a different person. Again, it's almost like every single cell in my body was changed. I went from a drinker and I was replaced. It looked the same, I talked the same, I acted the same, but I was no longer the same. I just didn't drink. And I can only again term that as grace. And I think it was through my spiritual practice, through my meditation, through yoga, self-inquiry, that opened me to the point. And I'm so glad that happened because I made so many mistakes. I endangered so many people through my lack of respect for myself that it's absolutely amazing I didn't hurt someone other than my friends, my girlfriend, my family. Vanessa said, did you have a hard upbringing? Nope. Loving, kind parents. Some issues with my mom. We never emotionally clicked. But she was never... It's weird to say that your mother was respectful instead of loving. But that's sort of the term that I can use. But I ended up being her caregiver with my father during her years with Alzheimer's. And then I ended up being my father's caregiver, which, both of those things broke me up completely, but in a good way. You know what? If you believe in the power of prayer, pray that somewhere in your life you're going to be broken open. I know that seems like an odd thing to pray for, but you know, the singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen sang that we're all meant to be broken because that's how the light gets in. Caring for my father during his final years, with him on his deathbed, best thing that ever happened to me. Same with my mom, because I was able to reach that level of forgiveness between us. Alzheimer's stripped my mom of everything except her innate goodness, who she really truly was. She was raw, vulnerable, and I don't even know the words to put it any longer. And it was my opportunity to be broken open and just outpour love, care, kindness, compassion. So, yeah, I had a pretty good upbringing. Grew up in an awesome, beautiful town that I still live in and absolutely love, Columbia, Maryland. Lots of friends. I had some issues, you know. We all did. I was extremely shy. I had speech impediment growing up, which made things awkward, and of course you open yourself up to ridicule. But I was also blessed with a certain not giving a shit. So overall, I just happened to like drinking for a really long time, unfortunately. Of course, and alcoholism runs in my family. My father didn't drink, an occasional beer I could probably count on two hands how many times I saw him ever have a beer. Um, but his father was an alcoholic, and we had uncles, cousins who all suffered the disease of alcoholism. And for whatever reason, first couple drinks that I had, and I was pretty much, well, it didn't help that when I first started drinking, I had a really good time for a long time. You know, I loved going to bars. I loved the entire, until people I was a social drinker, and I found every single reason in the world to be sociable. I was sociable every day of the week for hours on end until the bars closed down 2 o'clock, almost every night. And for the first couple years, it was a lot of fun until it wasn't. And it always gets to the point where it's not fun. You look around and you start realizing the looks that you thought of people thinking that you were awesome, you're this hard partier, quickly turn into pity. And you start realizing the damage that you're doing to your relationships and that you're not doing anything creatively with your life. I always wanted to be a writer, and I would write for, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, creative burst, and then everything would dry up and I would go for months at a time not being able to write anything. And I thought that's the way you're supposed to be when you're an artist. You're creative, and then everything dries up and you drink yourself through those creative droughts. That's what Charles Bukowski did. That's what Ernest Hemingway did. That's what William Faulkner did. And of course, they all had tragic lives in a way. It doesn't have to be that way. Creativity is not dependent upon your demands. It's about receptivity, making yourself available to be inspired. And inspiration is right here at my window, looking outside. Inspiration is right here in any book that I pick up. I can thumb through and pick a single word and start writing about that. Inspiration is finishing your meditation and writing about what's the first thing that pops up that occurs. Taking that morning walk in nature and coming back and writing about it. Inspiration is ever present. It's in the conversation that we're having. So I didn't need to drink myself through any dry period. I needed to get in touch with my creative, intuitive side and cultivate that. And that's what happened when I started meditating. And then I realized I just didn't need to drink. I will say smoking pot did help with my creativity at first, because it helped break open the doors of ordinary thinking. It helped break open the ordinariness of writing in this traditional way and helping me discover my voice. But just as Aldous Huxley said, the problem with any type of drug, mind-altering drug, is it's the same door. It's walking through that same door of perception every single time. It never expands, and it becomes more of a hindrance than an opening. So use it, gain access into that non-ordinary reality, and then you don't need it anymore. And of course, you can also get there through meditation. You can get there through drumming. You can get there through fasting. You can get there through deep, deep prayer. You can get there being in nature, ultra running, ultra hiking. Any type of endurance sport will bring you there. Or just sit, be quiet, be still. As it says, the Psalm, be still and know that you are God. Be still and let inspiration arrive. And it will, every single time. So, guys, with that, going to call it a day. It's almost 2 o'clock. I'm going to do my last sitting of meditation. And Evan S., thanks for coming in. Balance. Appreciate the conversation. Lizard Dogzilla, good luck on your quest. And again, I appreciate you stopping by. You all have a good day. And I'll see you. I'll be back later today reading from my blog, Nature, Yoga, Science. I don't know what I'm going to read until like a minute before I come in to read it. So stay tuned. Coming in, I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you then. Take care.